Yeah,
Is
yeah.
this yet another job for the superhero that is data analytics?
Look, everybody talks about data analytics in so many different contexts, don't they? And
Yeah,
certainly at your conferences, Colin, there's a lot of conversation about data analytics for the purposes of execution and risk management and risk transfer and
yep,
best execution and so on and so forth. And again, as sort of is normally the case, the sort of post-trade piece gets a little bit left behind. But again, when we think about liquidity and we think about FX businesses, but this is the full FX, yeah. Think about FX businesses, and certainly in my time, working within an FX business, and I'm sure many people will be familiar with this. The end of the year, the FX business gets an allocation for its use of funding. Yeah.
yep,
And frankly, nobody can really understand how that allocation is derived, which is annoying. Yeah.
mm,
And everybody contests it in their own little sort of logic way, but without really understanding how to contest it. But also what's annoying is that people don't really understand what behavior they can take to reduce that allocation.
yeah,
Because they don't understand sort of how it's derived in the first place. And so what we're seeing more and more banks do is have people that are really directly involved in understanding the allocation and understanding the driver of the funding requirements, across all businesses. And I guess we're thinking here about FX. So, let's
yeah,
think about it from the context of the FX business. Now, that might be an XVA desk person, or it might be somebody in business resource management or some similar function. What we understand, what we see is the only way to do that when you're thinking about intraday liquidity, because that's what we're really talking about from a funding perspective, is to understand what the real drivers of your funding requirements are. And so to do that, what you need to then do is to understand on a time-stamped basis all of the inflows and outflows by counterparty, by currency, by business line, and so on and so forth, so that you can then run that analysis.
yeah,
And I guess, again, these things come in sort of curious ways. We've spent a lot of time working on the real-time reconciliation of statements versus ledgers. So we create, time-stamped data on payouts and pay-ins across whichever lines of business our customers choose to use us for. Once you've got that timestamp data, you can then run the analysis on it. The analysis will show you what your drivers of your funding use are. It'll also allow you to quantify your funding use, yeah? And that can then result in two outcomes: either a conversation with people internally to have with their counterparties. You have a particular client that perhaps always pays late in size, yeah, for example. You have a
yep,
client that fails, yeah, that's another driver of liquidity as well. And or looking at the way you behave internally. How can we best sequence the way that we pay our obligations without just doing the obvious thing, which is to just do everything at the last minute, which would make you very unpopular with your counterparties, and it's just a race to zero, of course, yeah.
yes,
Without doing that, but rather by intelligently sequencing those payouts that need to happen, as a matter of urgency, first thing, and those others where you might be able to sort of manage that process more effectively, and running simulations. But again, the heart of it is to have high quality timestamp data that you can access and use.
yeah. You triggered an old memory in me there, Alex, of my very, very young days in banking, being called upon as one of the young chaps in the room who had to
Must have been a while ago.
sprint to the clearing bank. It was a long while ago, yeah. Sprint to the clearing bank with a check at like 3 o'clock to get it in before the 3:05 deadline,
Really?
and that happened on a daily basis. So yeah, we were very last minute when we didn't have data analytics.
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah.
I
And I look back on my history, and I remember being in the office of the guy who ran Global FX for the firm I worked at, and his COO came in and he pointed at my business line and he said, "You guys have got an allocation of $60 million. Yeah, what do you say?" Yeah,
thanks. Or
yeah,
is it a thank you, or is it a oh?
exactly, exactly.
Yes, I totally get that. Yeah.